Hi there, good morning. So this is Mahabodhi again. It's day 14 of this compassionate response to the coronavirus pandemic. And what we've been doing over the last 13 days has been just introducing, I've been introducing people to different meditations, loving kindness meditation, mindfulness of breathing meditation, a grounding meditation that I kind of evolved myself as a way of working with my own experience. And then we started to look last week at the Buddhist teaching on the Bardo, the Tibetan Buddhist teaching on the intermediate state after death. So it's like facing our difficult times, the dangerous pathway of life, the dangerous pathway after death, and how various Buddhas who are archetypal symbols representing particular enlightened qualities, how accessing those can help us to encourage us with our difficulties, with our fears, with our mind wandering off and all that sort of thing. So, and then yesterday I finished on the White Buddha, Vairocana, and the White Buddha is the central Buddha in the Five Buddha Mandala, and so he's associated with teaching. So, and his symbol is the lion. So, and I said that the Buddha roared the lion's roar of the Dharma. So it's like he proclaimed, just like a lion roaring in the jungle, with passion loudly, that this is how things are. So I just thought that yesterday I could pick up on that theme really and express, well, what does the Buddha say? What does he roar? What does he teach? And I've been working on a book which started out on working on a book on ritual to start with, and then that was in 2003 I started working on it, and then in 2005 I shifted over to working on mindfulness, because I thought I need to talk about meditation. If I'm going to talk about ritual, then I need to talk about mindfulness. I'm going to talk about meditation. So I started to explore the Buddhist teaching on the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. So this is the central teaching on mindfulness, and looked into that particular Buddhist scripture and the commentaries on it, and tried to make sense of it. Because I've got a physics degree, I need to understand how things work really, and that's my passion. One of my passions. Art's the other passion, and religion's the other passion. And I thought, I couldn't quite get what was being said, or how does this fit in with what I know about Buddhism, or is this inclusive enough of what I know about Buddhism? So I started an exploration of that, and it led me to lots of thinking about the whole thing. So today I'm going to go into that later on in the last part of the class today. But before that, I'm going to lead us in some body work, and then into some meditation, and then after that we'll look into some of these issues. So if you want to all stand up, and we'll do some loosening up. Okay, so just beginning by, let's just do the Do-in, which is from the Japanese tradition. So Do means way, like as in judo, kendo, those sorts of things. And it's a form of self-massage, so just begin by just drumming with your fingers on the top of your head. And as you do this, being aware of your feet touching the ground, and how it feels to have feet touching the ground. the sensations that you notice there in your feet, where the contact of the ground is, and also in the muscles of the feet, tops of the feet, and taking your attention up your legs, just noticing how it feels to have clothes on, or for your skin to be exposed to the air, and keep coming up your body, so around your waist, your back, just being aware of what sensations are there, what you can experience. And then just shake your hands out and your feet. And just keep brushing down your body, just to waken your skin a little bit. So we never don't have a body, you know. All beings have bodies. So we have to look after our body and make it a good vehicle for life, you know, so that we've got vitality, energy, and also relaxation. So we're looking for those two things: stimulation in a way, energy, and relaxation. So just rub your hands together, backs of your hands, up your arms. And then just put your forehead in the palms of your hands like this, and just curving over your neck and your back as well. So it's almost like maybe bend your knees a little bit. So it's almost like you're going a little bit into a fetal position. You're curling over, just having a sense of turning away from the world for a while, and towards yourself, and towards things like how you're feeling at the moment, what's on your mind. And take a few deeper breaths, just naturally. Just let your breath just come and go, but make it bigger, deeper. And just imagine drawing energy in on the in-breath, and expelling old stale air out the bottom of your lungs on the out-breath. Maybe having a sense of breathing out any tension, any things that you don't really want there in your psyche, useless ideas. So you're opening up a container for something new to come in. And then just giving your face a bit of a wash with your hands, and maybe be aware of just guidance on touching hands and face. You know, just be careful. Okay, shaking hands out again. And your head. So we're going to do some shaking. So what I want you to do is to put your hands like that, facing outwards, and just do this sort of thing. Make a bit of a noise with your breath, with your breathing. So leaning over, bending your knees slightly. Just get into a rhythm of up and down. And put any thoughts of embarrassment to one side. Because we're looking to actually have an effect on our body, not worry about what people think. And with our body, it's good to take our time, because it takes longer for our body to feel effects than our mind, which is quicker. And shake your hands out as well. Yeah. And then just put your elbow into the palm of your hand and get over the top there, onto your spine, waking up your spine. And then on the other side. And then down your arm, on the back of your hand, make it a little bit painful. Ouch. And then palms of your hands as well. Just imagine everybody clapping each other in the class for getting up and doing this and trying to make a difference in the world. So working on our mental states and our body, up the inside of the arm and down the outside, again on the back of the hand, and then other side, how's it still? Going down the arm, back of the hand, palm of the hand, up the inside of the arm, and then chest, down the sides, and lightly on the kidneys at the back there. And then more heavily on your buttocks, and try to get on the backs of your legs. And then down your legs as well. If you can get to your feet, do that. Okay, and then just shake everything out. So hopefully your body will be a bit more stimulated now. So now we're going to do something to smooth the energy of the body out, make it kind of flow. So something from Qi Kung. So just put your hands on your stomach, just below your navel, get your belly button, and just wait for your breathing to calm down. And then when you're ready, and you notice that you're breathing out, just bend your knees. And then when you're breathing in, straighten your knees. So it's just bend your knees and go down on the out breath, straighten your knees and come up on the in breath. And just put your thoughts to one side. They might get in. If you're not moving, you're probably thinking a lot. So we're looking to be in our body and with our body. So mind and body together, going down on the out breath, coming up on the in breath, going down on the out breath, and coming up on the in breath. And then just put your hands out front And on the in-breath, just bringing them up towards your chin, and then turning and then taking them down to your hips, and then bringing them up again on the in-breath to your chin, and then down. And just imagine that there's a ball of energy coming up the centre of your body as you do this, and then going down again. Coming up the centre of your body, this ball, and keep going past your chin up into the air, and then down the sides, and again up the middle, big golden ball coming up the centre of your body, and expanding outwards at the top, and then going down again. So just get this roughly right. You don't have to get it perfect. It's just the rough idea is the main thing, which is to do whatever brings some smooth energy into your body. You feel you've got energy in your body. That's what we're aiming at. So you need to take responsibility for that as you do this. And then just coming to a stop. So if you've not been here before, just find a chair to sit on, something not too soft, so that's going to support your weight, or cushions, meditation cushions, and then take a seat. So hopefully it'll be a lot easier to concentrate in meditation now that you've got some energy in your body and some flowing energy, some chi there as well. Your kind of skins are more awake, your muscles are more awake. And just getting used to this new position. And when we're meditating, meditation posture in a way is just, it's the way that we let our body just support us without having to be involved with it. So all we need to do is just try and balance our spine so that the bones of the body take the weight down into the ground. So just getting used to this new position. And being aware of the bones of your body and the angle that your spine is making so that your weight is going down into the ground. And then reflecting that relaxation is a physical thing. It's like unfurling a fist. So if your muscles feel confident that they are going to be supported by your skeleton, then they can actually let go. They can just soften and relax. So taking your attention down lower in your body. And just begin to notice the rising and falling of your abdomen. So we're going to do the mindfulness of breathing meditation, but we're going to do it focusing lower down in the body. And we're going to do 2 stages. We're going to do the first stage, which is watching the rising and falling of the abdomen. When we notice that the breath has just ended, we count 1, and then we watch it, the abdomen rising, and then when it falls, the end of it's falling, we count 2, and then the same after the next breath, 3, until we get to 10, and then the next breath we watch it rise, the belly rise, watch it fall, and then we count 1, and then 2, and then 3. So we just count sets of 10 breaths like that. And in the second stage it's the same thing, but we just count before the breath starts to rise. It's a slight difference. So the mindfulness of breathing. So just putting any thoughts to one side. If our thoughts are busy, maybe just imagine them over on the other side of the room. Just staying with our actual experience and feeling the rising and falling of the breath, of the abdomen. if your mind is wandered off or has got lost onto something, got onto something else, just don't worry about it. Just look at the next bit of rising and falling of the abdomen, and just pick up the counting again at the end of the out breath. So all we do now is carry on watching the rising and falling of the abdomen, but now we just move the counting to just before the breath begins. So as we notice the breath is about to start, we count 1 in our minds, and then 2, and then 3, and so on. So just taking your time to come out of that meditation and maybe look around a little bit into your environment. Okay, and then sitting comfortably, so we're not going to be doing any more meditation. Today, as I said earlier, we're going to be looking at, or beginning to look at, the Buddhist teaching on mindfulness, or the lion's roar of the Buddha on mindfulness, It's a little bit. The story's a little bit complex, really, because it's like, if we look at the scripture, the scripture, main scripture in Theravada Buddhism is called the Satipatthana Sutta. So it just means that foundations of mindfulness, but when I started to look at that back in 2005. What I realised was that so you've got different types of you've got two basic different types of Buddhism. You've got Theravada Buddhism. So Theravada Buddhism is like has in Southeast Asia, places like Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and then you've got Mahayana Buddhism, which is the Dalai Lama, Tibetan Buddhism, and Zen, and other schools like that. So basically, what happened was in the centuries after the Buddha died, a difference of opinion arose about what people wanted to practice. So some people wanted, some of the monks, some of the practitioners wanted to have a bit more of a kind of hard line, austere kind of practice, and some of the others, well, there's a debate about the whole thing. So some of the others were more interested in things like the teachings on loving kindness, or on patience, on emotions, that sort of thing. So what happened was there was what's called a schism, or a split between the Sangha, or the community of Buddhists, and you ended up with two schools, one of which became Theravada Buddhism. So the more austere, bit more intellectually orientated one went off and became that, and then the more emotionally orientated, this is really roughly speaking, orientated one went off and became Mahayana Buddhism. So Mahayana means the great way. So my name is Mahabodhi. So Maha means great, and Bodhi is enlightenment. So it's kind of reminding me that I want to try and help lots of people, not just sit on the cushion, looking after my own calm or whatever. So yeah, so when I started to look at mindfulness. So you'd have books like this, The Four Foundations of Mindfulness by Sayadaw U Silananda, Mindfulness in Plain English, and things like that. These are Theravada books on mindfulness. And I looked at the commentaries. What I noticed was that the way that things were interpreted were different. So So the Buddhist word for mind is in Pali, Pali is the ancient Indian language that was the scriptures were written down after the Buddha died, written down in. So the word for Pali is chitta. So here, that word chitta, and so in Theravada Buddhism, people have translated that as thought. In Mahayana Buddhism, it's often usually translated as heart-mind, so it's indicating that it's both the heart and the mind. So faced with dilemmas like that, how do I interpret it? Do I interpret it as thought? Do I interpret it as heart-mind? Whatever. So what ended up happening is like a long process of me having to try and work out these different terms, what they meant. So there's dharmas is another one, Vedana is another one. These are all foundations. There's 4 foundations of mindfulness, and 3 of them were problematic when I looked at them. How people expressed that. So there's a lot in this, and I'm going to go into it over time. So I don't want to, sometimes I get feedback that I give people too much information. So I want to put a marker down. I'm not going to do that, and just kind of gradually explore the 4 foundations of mindfulness over a number of days. It's really interesting actually how the whole mindfulness thing has come into contact with the West. So basically what happened, so you hear a lot about mindfulness, it's all in Time magazine, all that sort of thing. You had somebody called John Kabat-Zinn, and he wrote this book called Full Catastrophe Living. And the story is basically he practiced as a Zen practitioner back in the 1970s, but he was also involved with a medical school, and he was dealing with people who had really intense conditions, like chronic pain, like so unbearable pain that there was nothing that really could be done for these people. They were just in agony, by the point where you give people everything, you do everything you can, and then it's not enough. So what happened was that in that sort of very rare sort of situation of like the science and medicine running out of ideas, Kabat-Zinn had thought, well, what about like I did all this Zen practice, and I thought, well, this we do learn to face our experience. In Zen Buddhism, people sit there for hours and hours and hours not moving, and it's facing your experience, turning towards your experience, not running away from it, and just dealing with it and processing it, and something like that. So and very much turning towards accepting the limitations of that you're in. So you have to keep sitting still for hours and hours. So to work with your body, turn towards your mind and your body, and work with what's there. So he thought, well, maybe that could help these people, and he did manage to get permission to use some of the methods in the hospital, and it worked. So fantastic. It's like that was a sort of really important moment that he managed to bring that into into what it wouldn't be allowed otherwise, because it would have to be proven and everything scientifically or whatever it is. So so that happened, and then over the years, so Kabat-Zinn was sort of still doing his thing with those patients, and he was trying to grow that, and it took a long time. But then at the beginning of the 2000s, he started to make more progress in terms of getting some acceptance, and he still had a little bit of a battle with people would say, well, how want him to nail it all down and say, well, you have to this isn't very scientific. You have to name, you have to name everything, and you have to have evidence for it, and all this sort of stuff. So I noticed that I was looking at scientific papers back then, and I noticed there's kind of skirmish going on between John Kabat-Zinn and some scientists. But now, people have he really concentrated on trying to get it all validated scientifically. So it is validated scientifically, and then more and more mindfulness-based interventions, they're called, are kind of being used. So all people have to do is just to, if they want to deal with it, with eating disorders or anything, they have to evolve some course, they have to put it on, and then they have to have it evaluated scientifically, and then and then obviously theories about all that as well. So it then becomes acceptable, and it can be taught in the NHS, health services and things like that. So yeah. So that's Kabat-Zinn. That's mindfulness. That strand of things, and then there's another strand which is came through Tibetan Buddhism, and that's to do with the mind, or working on looking at the mind, and so in the 1970s there was an unconventional Tibetan Lama called Chogyam Trungpa, and he moved to England and then up to Scotland, and he was at a Scottish Tibetan monastery called Samyeling, and he had a bit of a car accident, and then he had some paralysis or something down one side, and but he just kept going, and he moved over to America and started teaching in a very kind of unconventional kind of way, and he attracted lots of people, and he was really interested in working within the Western society to work with Westerners as they are, so he set up a thing called the Naropa Institute, and it was a kind of it's like a proto-university, and on it he did courses that he got poets to do poetry courses. He's trying to integrate Buddhism and the West, Buddhist culture and the Western culture, and he got a scientist called Francisco Varela who was a well-known cognitive scientist, to do some talks on cognitive science and try and relate them to Buddhism. Anyway, so he did that, Francisco Varela, and then the Dalai Lama got interested in that, because he is interested in science, so he sort of helped promote that, and what ended up happening is that the Mind and Life Institute started, and so this book, The Embodied Mind, was published in 1992, and it's Francisco Varela and two co-authors, and it was like bringing together cognitive science and Buddhism, or trying to kind of relate the two. So there've been a lot of things in the magazines about meditators with electrodes attached to the brains and measuring the brain waves and all that sort of thing, proving that meditation works. And so it's another science-based thread. And Tibetan Buddhism is kind of very much it's got lots of devotion in it, so it's very in a way religious. It's religiously orientated. So I think what's really interesting is like how, and part of the work that I've been doing over the years has been trying to kind of marry all those things together, like what is symbolism, what's religion, what's mindfulness, what's secularity, how do you bring all that kind of thing together? And so, I will be exploring that over the coming days. But I'll just end today by just introducing you to the Buddha, talking about, if I can find my glasses, what the Buddha says about mindfulness. So this comes from the Satipatthana Sutta, which is in the middle length discourses of the Buddha. So it says, "Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Kuru country, where there was a town of the Kurus called Karmasadama. There he addressed the monks thus. 'Monks, Venerable Sir,' they replied. The Blessed One said this: 'Monks, this is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of nirvana, namely, the four foundations of mindfulness.' What are the four? Here, monks, a monk abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, which means passionate, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating feeling as feeling, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating mind as mind, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. So he then goes on to say, to take each of those four things, body, feeling, mind, and mind objects or mental objects, individually, and so how you practice mindfulness with each of those. Okay. So this is the pivotal teaching of the Buddha on mindfulness. That when people refer to it, when people practicing mindfulness in a secular context are saying, "Oh, it comes from Buddhism. This is where it comes from." Obviously, some people think, "Oh, it comes generally from the past, from all sorts of religions," but I think it has really come from Buddhism. So what's central here in this introduction to the Satipatthana Sutta? What can we say is central? Well, a few things. So the Buddha says that the practicing the four foundations of mindfulness is the direct path to nirvana. So that's one thing. Okay, so what is nirvana? Well, what the Buddha did was solve the suffering of old age, sickness and death. So before he was the Buddha, he was called Gautama, and he was a young man living in India, and he was troubled by the fact that even though he had quite a pleasant life, it said he lived in a palace, but it's probably more like his father was kind of high up in the hierarchy of the village or something, or the town. He saw that actually, no matter what he did, that people suffered, people got old, and people died. So this really troubled him, and he decided to leave home and become a wandering mendicant. And he wandered around India looking for teachers. And in those days, there were lots of people doing that. It was a bit like the 60s maybe, like people were searching for solutions to things that maybe have come up because there'd been more cities and towns being built, and so there's more leisure time and all that sort of thing. So existential questions were coming up for people. So he joined these mendicants and went looking for teachers, and so he did actually solve that as a problem. So he became it no longer troubled him, the fact that there was old age, sickness, and death, because he could deal with that and accept it. And so in a way, this is the greatest happiness that a person can have, within the limitations of life, is to be able to be unaffected by anything that's got suffering attached to it normally. So you wouldn't suffer in the face of illness, in the face of dying, in the face of getting old. He would suffer physically. So the Buddha, when he was old, he had a lot of pain in his body, but he wouldn't agonise about it. It wouldn't be a kind of problem for him mentally. So mindfulness is about overcoming suffering and pain and attaining nirvana. And the way that we do that is to practice the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. But we have to do that. So in the scripture it says the monk with clear comprehension and mindfulness contemplates the body. So it's like we have to have clear comprehension. We have to clearly understand how it all works. Well, it will work to some degree if we just do the practice, if we just follow instructions and just do the mindfulness of breathing, or we do the loving kindness meditation. If we just do the body work, it will have some sort of effect, But I think it's really important to, in the long term, to just have a clearer understanding of the whole thing. And this is what a lot of my work has been about, trying to clearly understand how one thing conditions another. So, for instance, how the body, if we stimulate the body and help the body get relaxed, that it has an effect on the mind and the emotions. So, if you get really clear about that, you're going to want to do that. So I'm not going to say any more today, but I'm just going to give you a preview of tomorrow. So I'm just going to move around to the kitchen. So here we are in the kitchen. So these are the four foundations of mindfulness that we're going to be looking at over the coming days: body, feeling, mind, and views. And the important thing that we're going to be looking at is how these four things, how they are sources of happiness, how they're sources of suffering, and how they affect each other. So, they're not separate, they're not disconnected, they're interconnected. So and mind here isn't just thoughts, it's emotions. So our views affect our emotions, our feelings affect our views. There's a whole matrix of conditions there that are going to be important to think about if we're going to understand what the Four Foundations of Mindfulness are. So I wish you well today, and hopefully see you tomorrow. Or you can just access these videos online, and I'm making progress getting them onto YouTube, so they'll all be on YouTube eventually. So okay, so I wish you well today, and so actually there is one parting thing I'd like to say. In the sutta, I didn't mention it there, it says the monk practices contemplates the body, having given up, in a way, obsession with the world. So what we're doing here with mindfulness is we're not looking out into the world for we're not taking refuge in what happens out in the world. We're not relying on the world out there to bring us happiness. So this is like really important at the moment, where a lot of people are having to face staying in and being in isolation, and they're just losing their normal stimulation from the world outside. So what we do in meditation is we're turning inward, and we're able to be self-sufficient and look at what we need to do to be happy, just sitting on our meditation cushions, or just practicing awareness. So in this way we give up reliance on the world outside, and we turn our reliance inward to ourselves. So yeah, that is the main thing to think about this week, in this session, that we're turning away from the world, but there's a place to go. There's a place to go which involves bringing mindfulness to our experience. So that's all for today, and I wish you well, and see you tomorrow. Okay, thanks, bye.